A paraplegic Chinese woman has been fighting for her rights for 7 years, but she's not only a victim of forced demolition. A shortage of power in 3 Chinese provinces shuts down some factories and heating devices. At the same time, China bans Australia's coal, the main raw material for producing electricity in the country. We break down the U.S. Secretary of Transportation's relation to the CCP and that of her husband, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And Chinese telecom company Huawei is now allowed to operate in Germany, as long as it guarantees its equipment won't be used for sabotage, espionage, or terrorism. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. One paraplegic woman in China tells us her story about seeking justice from Chinese authorities. For 7 years, she suffered at the regime's hands, from assault to being hospitalized, all for refusing to give in to the forced demolition of her home. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
A Chinese paraplegic woman suffered assault at the hands of a crew of gangsters. She says they were hired by Chinese authorities and shared the details with us in an interview. She recounted that her attackers suddenly broke into her home, stripped her, dragged her outside by her hair, and beat her with batons, all because she refused to evacuate her home after officials earmarked her property for forced demolition. Her name is Li Chunxia. She says she's been fighting for her rights for 7 years. She was home with her husband one early morning in 2013 when, without warning or any legal notice, excavators came to demolish their house with them still inside. Their husband immediately shouted, "There are still people inside." That's when the hired muscle wielding knives and batons entered the house.
I was naked and my body was bloody from being beaten. After they ripped my clothes off, they pulled my hair, and I could actually see my arm swelling after being hit.
She explained that as the attackers beat her, she became covered in dirt and mud, causing yet another trouble for her health problems, bed sores. Her husband managed to break away from the gathered crowd to call the police, but the police department was reluctant to dispatch officers at first.
The police didn't want to come. They said their superior gave orders that they're not allowed to come. But my husband begged them, saying, "My wife is going to die." We wanted to call the ambulance, but at first the government didn't allow that. By the time I finally got to the hospital, my bed sores were covered in sand and mud, but they wouldn't clean the wounds. I was in the hospital and they still didn't clean it. I was left like this for a day, and my sores got severely infected, which gave me blood poisoning. I developed a strange rash all over my body that I couldn't stop itching.
Once at the hospital, she underwent a total of 11 surgeries, one every 7 days. But her wounds showed little improvement, and her health continued to worsen. She later transferred to another hospital, where she endured 4 more surgical procedures. After a total of 15 operations, her health began to improve, but she still suffered recurring bed sores. Due to the beating and hospitalization, the demolition of Li's house was temporarily postponed. But authorities still forced her to sign away her property rights and the deed to her home.
They came to the hospital to force me to sign. They said if I don't sign, they'll arrest my husband.
She was paid $23,000 as compensation for the property, as well as a small unrenovated warehouse to live in. She sought justice through online social media platforms and China's legal system, but has faced huge obstacles. She told us she has yet to find the justice she seeks and just wants her dignity back. This is Don Ma reporting, NTD News.
At least 3 Chinese provinces have ordered restrictions on power usage. It may be tied to China's recent ban on Australian coal. NTD's Grace Wang has more.
China's eastern coastal province of Zhejiang ordered small businesses to shut down production earlier this week. Now even local street lights have gone out. Authorities say it's all due to a power shortage. 2 other provinces have issued similar orders. Authorities blame the shortage on increased wintertime power usage for heating houses and buildings. But locals point out power hasn't been restricted during the winter month for many years. Some suspect the shortage comes because of Russia's restriction on power exports to China, as well as Beijing's ban on importing Australian coal. This Monday, some factories in Zhejiang province received emergency notices from local authorities, demanding that production stop immediately from now until the end of the year. The notice also states that companies and province-level institutions are only allowed to turn on indoor heating when the outside temperature drops below 37 degrees, and that the temperature inside must not exceed 60 degrees. Online videos show that small factories have stopped all production, while light-up signs on storefronts along the streets have gone dark. Zhejiang is one of China's richest provinces and is home to many foreign companies, many of them in the manufacturing sector. Inside the province, Yiwu City has been dubbed the world supermarket. Many products featuring made in China labels are made there. At the same time, Hunan and Jiangxi province also began restricting power usage. One netizen from Hunan province complained about having climbed 20 stores to reach his office. That's because the building elevator was turned off. Authorities' vague reasoning for the sudden restrictive measures prompted speculation from citizens. Some cited media outlets reported earlier this month that a Russia power company may suspend wintertime power exports to China this year due to losses. Some netizens also questioned China's ban on Australian coal imports, raising questions about why Chinese authorities reportedly left dozens of ships loaded with Australian coal to drift off the coast for months, especially when China seemed to need coal for electricity production. Reporting by Grace Wang, NTD News.
Chinese human rights lawyer Yu Wenshen has been detained for nearly 3 years. That's also how long authorities have blocked him from seeing his wife and child. Now, the trial to hear his appeal has been postponed indefinitely. NTD's Chang Chun has more on the story.
Human rights lawyer Yu Wenshen was sentenced to 4 years in prison in a secret trial this summer. It was for, as Chinese authorities call it, subversion of the country. Yu immediately appealed, but nobody responded until his wife Xu Yan called the higher court in Jiangsu province on Wednesday, December 16th, and was told the second trial had been postponed. But the court refused to tell her the new scheduled date, nor did the court respond to Xu's request to allow family to be present at the second trial. The judge's assistant told Xu he could not turn on the computer system and answer her questions. Xu said, "The postponement violated the law and was also very inhumane, as she was not allowed to see her husband for 3 years. She had hoped to finally see him in the court."
My first thought was they intentionally delayed this case. This violates the law because they did not give me and his lawyer any legal documents. This is also very inhumane. It's been 3 years now that my child and I haven't been allowed to see him, and now they want to delay it indefinitely.
Xu pointed out there were many issues in the first trial. She hopes that the second trial would resolve them.
The first trial was held in secret, and many of my husband's legal rights were deprived. My husband filed his own appeal. His right hand is now trembling and disabled, so he can't write. He wrote the appeal letter with his left hand and submitted it by himself. His defense lawyer and I demand that legal remedy be applied in the second trial. We hope we can get a fair result.
Yu was actively involved in politically sensitive cases. Among his clients were practitioners of the spiritual group Falun Gong, civil rights activists, and his fellow human rights lawyers. In January 2018, his lawyer's license was canceled, and he was arrested for proposing to amend the Constitution. In June of this year, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Yu met with his defense lawyer about 3 years after his arrest, but he still has not seen his wife and child till today. Reporting by Chang Chun, NTD News.
U.S. lawmakers introduced bills in both chambers of Congress to stop forced organ harvesting in China. Senator Tom Cotton introduced the bill on Tuesday. He said in a statement the Chinese regime continued to harvest organs from prisoners and people of faith. Chris Smith and Thomas Swayze also introduced the bill in the House on the same day. Once Congress passes the bills, the U.S. government can deny or revoke the passports of people buying organs. The president can also sanction foreign officials who take part in organ harvesting. It would also mean foreign people and organizations responsible for organ harvesting won't be able to import transplant surgery devices from America. China is one of the top destinations for organ transplant tourism. Beijing has said organs come from voluntary donations. But an international tribunal conducted in London refuted Beijing's claim last year after investigation. It concluded organ harvesting did occur in China on a significant scale. It said ethnic minority Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region and practitioners of spiritual movement Falun Gong have been the main source of organs. The FBI is apparently canceling briefings on Congressman Swalwell's ties to a purported Chinese spy. The House's top Republican alleges. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says the FBI canceled 2 briefings on Representative Swalwell's ties to a purported Chinese spy. The top House Republican explains that he asked the FBI for a briefing on the Swalwell spy case. The Bureau arranged 2 briefings before canceling both. McCarthy called Swalwell a national security liability. Congressman Swalwell is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. An exclusive report by Axios recently exposed his ties to a purported Chinese spy. At least 17 House Republicans have urged Speaker Nancy Pelosi to remove Swalwell from the House Intelligence Committee. Beijing reportedly stood the U.S. up for a virtual meeting. The annual conference is a senior-level meeting focused on maritime safety. It's tied to the Military Maritime Consultative Agreement, known as MMCA. China's Navy was due to participate this week. The U.S. military explained it has met regularly with China's People's Liberation Army, or PLA, for MMCA discussions since 1998. Admiral Phil Davidson, head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, denounced China for the absence. He called it another example showing China does not honor its agreements. He went on to add that the incident should serve as a reminder to all nations as they pursue agreements with China. China's Navy colonel rejected the criticism, claiming the 2 sides did not reach an agreement on the topics up for discussion. The MMCA partly designed to look at unsafe military events that have occurred between U.S. and PLA forces. That's including incidents in the South China Sea. In both parties in the U.S., there are people with close ties to the communist regime. Today, we will take a look at U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao, the Secretary of Transportation. Elaine Chao was the first Chinese American to serve as a cabinet secretary. She thus became popular in China since the Bush administration. During the Obama administration, she stopped working for the government, but continued to use her celebrity status to help the family business and expanded her network in China. Her extended family owns a shipping company, and its business mainly focuses on China. Elaine's father founded the family business, the Foremost Group, in the 60s. It started from a New York-based shipping company and gradually established deep connections with the Chinese economy and top political figures. Elaine's father was a schoolmate of Jiang Zemin, and Jiang later became the CCP chairperson. For a dozen years, he was the most powerful man in China until 2003. The 2 men remained on good terms for decades. In the 80s, Elaine's father was invited to celebrate China's 35th anniversary and met with then top leader Deng Xiaoping. According to the New York Times, citing numerous interviews, industry filings, and government documents, Elaine Chao has been using her popularity to raise Foremost Group's profile, including talking about the family business and projects on Chinese mainstream media. Elaine used to work for the Foremost Group too, but when taking position in the Trump administration, she failed to disclose any of her family's extensive ties with the Chinese shipping industry during her appointment hearings. Neither did she disclose the titles and honors she obtained in China, which she should have done. The success of her family business in turn benefited the couple tremendously, especially her husband's career. The Chao family have made political contributions to the Kentucky Republican Party for over 30 years, and they are the top donor. The family donations made McConnell a powerful Republican fundraiser. According to the Federal Election Commission record, it first started with a $10,000 donation soon after Elaine Chao and Mitch McConnell first met in 1989. At the time, McConnell was preparing for his re-election campaign. Over the years, McConnell has also attended numerous Chao family events and trips related to the family business. Not only this, in 2017, he conveniently arranged some CCP delegation members to visit the U.S. Capitol, including some restricted areas. These CCP members were from Chao's hometown, and Chao's office also made the arrangement for them to take pictures with Elaine and her father. The SEC is fining Luckin Coffee $180 million for accounting fraud. It says Luckin overstated its 2019 revenue and understated its net loss. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
Luckin Coffee has agreed to pay a $180 million fine to settle accounting fraud charges, but it hasn't admitted or denied the charges. The CEO said, "This settlement with the SEC reflects our cooperation and remediation efforts." The China-based rival to Starbucks fabricated its 2019 sales, which sent its shares plunging. After that, China's securities regulator and the SEC started investigating. An SEC official said public issuers who access our markets, regardless of where they are located, must not provide false or misleading information to investors. Luckin said its chief operating officer fabricated up to $310 million in sales. In June, Nasdaq delisted Luckin because of the scandal. The SEC alleges that Luckin Coffee colluded with third parties to create false sales. And in order to conceal the fake sales, they created a fake database of expenses of more than $190 million. Because of the fraud, they were able to raise $864 million from debt and equity investors. Luckin's CEO Jian Liu has been suspended while the company carries out its investigation. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Germany is one step closer to allowing Huawei equipment in its 5G networks, thanks to a new security bill. NTD's Patrick Hayden spoke to a telecom expert to find out more.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has approved a security bill that allows Huawei to keep operating in Germany, as long as it guarantees its equipment won't be used for sabotage, espionage or terrorism. Now the bill goes to Parliament. Revita Network CEO Declan Ganley says Huawei has strong ties to a number of mobile carriers in Germany.
It certainly is more than a foot in the door for Huawei to continue the deployments that have been going on in Germany.
Ganley says Deutsche Telekom continued to deploy equipment while the government was deciding how to handle Huawei.
Where Deutsche Telekom, knowing that no decision had been made, continued to deploy Huawei 5G equipment all over Germany, creating what we call the facts on the ground strategy.
Ganley says funding from the Chinese Communist Party allows Huawei to squash local competition.
So the CCP has been backing a model that is not sustainable, doesn't make economic sense, but that does allow them to capture the 5G domain across Europe.
Ganley says the law would give Huawei access to the German market.
What it does is it does not give any single entity in Germany or the German government the power to block Huawei. So to be able to block, to implement a ban, you would now need consensus.
He says Huawei is a threat, not something we should still be speculating on.
Right now, you have Australia being publicly tortured in front of the world with bans on wine, now on coal, and on it being squeezed in every area of the Australian economy that China can touch.
He says the reason China has launched a trade war on Australia is because they were the first to block Huawei's 5G networks. To a lesser degree, he says it's because they are calling for an independent investigation into the origins of the CCP virus. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.